Hello, everyone. I'm Jamie Reed. I'm a technical account manager here at GitLab, and I'm joined by three of my colleagues for a discussion on an OKR from the outgoing second quarter of our fiscal year, specifically surrounded or aimed at improving or iterating upon our executive business review template. So the intent of the OKR was to take all the learnings that we as an organization have gathered over the last year plus of running regular executive business reviews with our customers, to try and iterate upon the slide template that TAMs can use to create a slide pack for use with their customers and create a more consistent and valuable experience that TAMs can build for their customers. So as part of that, we thought we would record an informal conversation as a group here about three major acts or sections within the executive business review, talk a bit about what the intent of each section is, what we're trying to convey from the customer, and conversely, what we'd like to hear back from the customer as part of that conversation, what has gone well for us, and any other tips or tricks that we would like to share for our colleagues when they prepare for and deliver an executive business review. So let's start first with the first section of the EBR, which Sophie's going to speak to. So Sophie, I'll ask that you introduce yourself and the section you'd like to speak to here. That would be the GitLab update part. That's the opener of the conversation. You've done your introductions. You're now meant to sort of get the conversation going, and I'll ask that you speak to the intent of this section.
Sure, thank you. So I'm Sophie Polican. I am a manager on the East TAM team, newly manager, yes. So the GitLab update section in an EBR is really a way to get everybody in the room that you're presenting to, understanding what GitLab is, give them a refresher on what GitLab is. Sometimes some of the executives that we have on EBRs don't really have a good sense of what GitLab does, what GitLab can displace in terms of tools, what tools GitLab integrates with. So this is just a really good setting the stage for the rest of the presentation. One of the slides that I find to be the most powerful during this discussion is the slide 6 that lays out all of the different stages of GitLab. And should I share my screen? I should probably share my screen. I'll do that. This slide that shows all of the different stages of GitLab. And what I do on this slide is I highlight in yellow the parts of GitLab that the customer has already uses today and that they've adopted. And the rest, the unhighlighted ones, are areas where that they can either adopt those tools, or we can help them actually like adopt those sections of GitLab. And I think this resonates really well with the executives because it shows that they're paying for all of this tooling and all of these different parts of GitLab, and they're really only using a subset of what they're paying for. So I think this slide resonates the best in EBRs. And then the rest of the slides that I have, I lost it. The rest of the slides in the GitLab update section, the last slide on there talks about like the value that GitLab provides, and that's kind of a segue into the next section that Chloe's going to talk about on the like growth and goals of the customer. But this kind of just shows like just the main problems that GitLab aims to solve for our customers, and highlights kind of which ones the customer currently aligns with, and then maybe if they have these types of problems in their organization, how we can help them with GitLab. So that's the GitLab update section. I will pass it to Chloe to talk about the growth, objectives, and goals.
Actually, before we move off, I wanted to give Chloe a shout out. So thank you, Sophie. Great overview, and I love that tip you shared about colorizing the stage by stage breakdown of our functionality as a way to highlight the value that they're deriving from specific features, but also really like the white space, the greenfield opportunity that we know exists with almost every one of our customers, where there's this whole swath of functionality that they haven't considered, and as a TAM we could enable them or empower them to explore that. But I wanted to credit I think I can credit Chloe for iterating on the value driver slide that you were just speaking to, Sophie. I'll share that briefly here. So the 3 core value drivers we talk about here, we used to have 2 separate slides that talked first about the value drivers, and then secondly, about how we would measure them. And then Chloe, during one of her EBRs, had iterated upon this to try and collapse that into one single slide. So it's more easier to connect things like you might measure like cycle time to how GitLab can increase a company or a customer's operational efficiencies. And Chloe, if you want to share some thoughts on that, please feel welcome.
Sure. I mean, I wanted it just to be easier to consume by the customer, and also just selfishly a little bit easier to present, not having to kind of explain one thing and then move on to another. So I'm glad that you like it.
And as Sophie said, I love that slide as like the prime the pump. You've got people thinking about, what are my business goals? How am I going to actually measure success, and how am I going to get there? And it's that, what are my goals and how will I get there, that we want to really spend a lot of the EBR time discussing. And that's the meat of many EBR conversations that often is most exciting. And Chloe, lucky you get to speak to that. So take it away.
Awesome. Thank you. So the growth goals and objective section is my favorite part of the EBR. I think it really demonstrates the fruits of our partnership, and the ROI that GitLab provides after purchase, long after purchase. It also gets a lot of conversation flowing from our stakeholders, which is always great. You want EBRs to be very engaging, collaborative. You don't want to just talk 2 slides for an hour and a half. That's not fun. So to start off this section, I like to directly address and relay back to the customer why they chose to use GitLab and how GitLab helps them to succeed, ever since purchase or upgrade or whatever is relevant. It's a great opportunity to discuss how they've accomplished what they set out to from when they purchased, and prime the conversation for the current and future goals. I also sometimes like to highlight any significant events or celebrate wins that have happened throughout the partnership, just really highlighting all the good stuff that we've done together. So then I dive into outlining the customer's strategic objectives at the current state. So I always try to preface it by saying something like, these are your goals as we understand them, which allows room for the conversation, for the customer to agree, disagree, add additional things that maybe they haven't just funneled down to me yet, or maybe I didn't think it was as important as it actually is. So I always also take the objectives that I list out directly from the success plan that I've created, and I also validate them with my champion just before the EBR, just to make sure, everything that we're talking about isn't a surprise. So then I go into detail about each individual objective, specifically how we plan to achieve it. I also highlight anything that we've already accomplished towards the goal. I want to give credit to anyone involved in any progress. And I also try to really be specific about how we'll measure success. I think a lot of customers struggle with just metrics in general. So really driving that conversation, I think, is really helpful. They realize how important it is, and it kind of opens their eyes to, oh yeah, we did accomplish a lot. We're working on a lot. So always want to highlight that. Even if something isn't going well, I also bring that up and just address how we're working on it together in order to get back on track. And then to finish up the goals section, I like to turn the conversation around. So so far we've talked about, everything that we're aware of is most important, the things that we're actively working on, but what else haven't we talked about? What's important to the customer? What should we focus on going forward? Just really turn it into an open forum, ask open-ended questions, and just really give your customers the opportunity to share anything that's on their mind.
I love it. Chloe, thank you. The best tip there, and you mentioned it, right? This is where you're spending your time prepping, you're talking to your champion, you're really preparing this slide. This is where I typically spend almost all of my time in prep, is making sure that I understand the customer's goals. Typically, as part of the TAM motions, we should have a good idea of those, but I love how you highlighted, this is a conversation about hearing from the customer, right? So you mentioned create the space, make sure the customer has the opportunity to validate the goals we've expressed, and maybe add some more, or even disagree with some of the ones we might have historically understood. I also love that you highlighted, using this as an opportunity to celebrate the wins that the customer has achieved and the wins that we have helped them achieve as well. So the good things that we've done for them. Love it.
Awesome. Thank you.
Okay, so after this goals conversation, what I typically like to do and what the template speaks to here is jumping off into a product update type of conversation. So based on on the back of one of these goal conversations, it's usually appropriate to invite a product manager of an appropriate group or stage to speak to a part of GitLab's functionality that would be highly relevant to one of the goals your customer has expressed. This might be functionality that your customer has already adopted, and maybe it's just a roadmap update about here's the new things that are coming, here's some of those bug fixes we asked of you, kind of a more operational thing. And it may be more of an educational, I won't call it a salesy type conversation, right? The point of an EBR is not sales. The point of an EBR is enablement and education and goals alignment, right? So in the template here, currently we have a 2 or 3 slide overview of value stream analytics. But that's not necessarily the required product overview. So please feel free to make the decision that you feel is right for your customer, and it will be most relevant. We're also joined here by a fourth, Brian Campini, that I'll invite now to speak to the fourth and final act, the most free form, probably the most difficult part of the VBR template to speak to. So lucky Brian, which is what I'll call the product update combined with usage insights and maybe some of the more tactical things you might want to cover to perhaps address specific customer needs. So Brian, I'll open the floor to you if you have comments here, and same with Chloe and Sophie if you want to add. There's a lot of ground to cover on this part of the template, and I think what I would share as an individual is it's really a choose your own adventure. So pick and choose the parts that, again, you feel will hit the parts of the conversation that your customer will most care about.
Cool, thanks, Jamie. My name is Brian Campini. I'm a technical account manager here at GitLab. And I wanted to speak to the slides here specific around what Jamie had mentioned around product update, where inviting a product manager for a stage specifically to your customer's usage or education is very helpful. I try to keep it around 10 minutes or so, and that usually will garner some questions. One area where I've seen success is the Jira integration and the Jira integration roadmap. For a lot of customers that use Jira integration, the engineering team is very interested in what they can do with their existing Jira instance, and eventually even ultimate features. But at premium customers, Jira integration is a very educational topic for the product update for what they can do and how they can leverage that integration with their GitLab instance. Regarding product usage statistics, this, as Jamie said, this is really a choose your own adventure, and it's my experience that it's very good that a lot of this does come last, because if you do have VPs or higher level folks in the call, they really don't care about numbers. But what they can do, and there is a slide here actually where we go into usage insights from the usage ping, service ping, I believe. And as Chloe had said, this is probably where is going to drive your conversation for growth goals and insights for the customer. I would not recommend that you sit and go over numbers and statistics. Having a high level page of numerics is a good one, exactly like what I think Jamie's sharing right now, where it's a high level that they can see growth in metrics, but you don't want to really need to go into details on how many pipelines they ran or how many SaaS jobs they're running specifically. It's more to tell a story of, hey, you're using GitLab pretty well. And you are, we like to see that. Here's where we think you can grow. So it definitely informs the growth goals. One thing I did want to speak to is slide 24, the open and delivered requests. This is definitely part of the choose your own adventure, as I have customers that have had issues open for well over a year, and they are quick to remind us of that. So that may not be something you want to highlight necessarily in an EBR, unless it's something that they have specifically asked for and we've delivered and we are continuing to iterate on, or it benefits the story. We obviously do want to, highlight if there's something outstanding that's important to them, and we haven't done that. But sometimes having an open and delivered, or still open versus yet to be delivered or already delivered list is not beneficial or productive. That's about all I had. Jamie or Chloe or Sophie.
Thanks, Brian. what I love about this section is the opportunity to customize this and to really speak to a part of either the TAM relationship or the product relationship that the customer has with us, highlight what's going well, maybe some opportunities for improvements, as you mentioned, Brian. And often, speaking to my past experience in EBRs, this becomes the thing that happens at the end of the EBR that sometimes is often time compressed. That's not an excuse not to prep well for it. Make sure that you can speak appropriately to each of these slides and you've filled them out. But more often than not, these are the parts that we're rushing through, and I usually end up just picking up the slack on this in like a future cadence call. Cool. Well, that pretty much puts us at time here. Any closing thoughts, comments, questions from the group here before we wrap things up? Awesome. Well, to the audience here, I hope this has been a helpful overview of how to prepare your own EBR and the 3 key parts of what an EBR really is. Thanks.
Thank you.